from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you, and man, what a glorious day. Trump is still president, by the way. Happy about that. Now, I want to invite you to call the show tonight if you are so inclined. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And lots of stuff in the news. You've got military involvement headed over to the southern border. To that, I say it's about time. We got a couple of clips from Tom Homan and some news on that. We also have some other news here. It's time for Putin to end the war, Trump says. So we're going to get into a bunch of stuff tonight. But I want to start with Speaker Mike Johnson today, because he made some comments on the Biden crime family, and I thought they were poignant. Listen to this, cut 2.
It was shocking. I mean, it was shocking what President Biden did on the way out, pardoning his family for more than a decade of whatever activity, any nonviolent offenses. It was breathtaking to us. I don't think that's anything like that's ever been anticipated. And by the way, go look at the tape. 4 years ago, when it was just implied that President Trump might do something similar, they were apoplectic. Joe Biden himself, Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, roll the tape. They all said that would be crazy and unconscionable, and now they're cheering it along. To us, it is disgusting. To us, it probably proves the point, the suspicion that, they call it the Biden crime family. If they weren't the crime family, why do they need pardons, right? Look, there's a lot of attention that's going to be paid to this, and I think that is appropriate, and we will be looking at it as well.
It's about time that they keep looking at it. But look, the one person I didn't see on Joe Biden's pardon list was Joe Biden himself. So maybe there's still a shot here of going after the big guy while he's protecting his whole family, but we shall see. Something tells me nothing really comes of this. This is an ongoing debate I have with some friends and some family members that were saying that, there was going to be mass arrests and this and that. And I don't usually engage with that stuff, but I decide to engage every now and again just to gloat, just to say, they fooled you again. Your popcorn went stale. Anyway, I want to get into some of this other stuff. We've got the birthright citizenship debate continues. Now you've got people that are trying to defend it, to continue to protect chain migration because they think that's the right thing to do. Rob Bonta, who's the Attorney General for the state of California, was on MSNBC today, and he says that every time Trump violates the Constitution, we're going to see him in court and we're going to stop him. So they're going to sue Trump for trying to end birthright citizenship. Check this out.
The president did make a promise on birthright citizenship and revoking it, and I made it a promise too, and I'm keeping it, that I will see you in court when you break the law and violate the U.S. Constitution. That promise applies here, and it applies to any other action that he takes. We're looking closely at his other executive orders, including trying to use the military for civil immigration enforcement activities on American soil. We're looking at some of the other executive orders, how they impact our transgender communities, and so we expect this not to be the first overreach and unlawful and unconstitutional action by the president. And every time and any time he violates the law, it violates the U.S. Constitution, we will see him in court and we will stop him.
So now, listen, I get it. The lawfare will continue, right? They're not going to go after Trump this time. They're going to go after his policies. Okay, that's kind of his job as Attorney General. If he thinks this stuff is unjust, go for it. They did it while he was president last time, right? They sued him for trying to put up the wall. They sued him because he tried to reallocate money to build the wall. They've been at Trump since day one, coming at him for trying to defend our borders. The problem is they've stayed in the dust. The American people are now alongside the president. And they were then, and they are more so now. Today I was in my car, not my car, my friend's car. I go to the gym with a couple of buddies. two guys that I know from high school. And one guy's background is Costa Rican. The other guy's background is from the Dominican Republic. And me, right? My family background is from Puerto Rico. We're a bunch of Americans of Hispanic descent and in our 40s. And the topic of discussion that they brought up, not me, was I wonder what we could do to help get more people deported. Now, I had to stop and ask myself, are these guys white supremacists? Are these guys self-loathing Latinos? Or is it that they see this country that's provided so many opportunity for so many people going by the wayside, and they're hoping that the military hit traffic on the way to the southern border, right? They're hoping that Tom Homan needs a hand and they could tag me in, coach, type of thing. I think it's the latter, right? I really do believe that, or I should say the former, they really, really care about this country and they want to see us do better. And things are out of control, right? And we even went to lunch after the gym and we were talking about it there. And one friend tells me, he looks at me and he says, that guy right there, the guy who just poured our water, think that guy's in the country legally or not? I said, I don't know. I can't tell. I mean, oftentimes not the wait staff, but, the runners and the bus boys and stuff like that, sometimes they're not. And I said, I don't know. And he said, now, do you think we should be deporting guys like that? He said, of course not. The people we got to go after are the people in the streets, the overflow of people that are trying to get jobs, the ones waiting in the parking lots of the Home Depots and things of that nature. They obviously, their supply is greater than the demand that we have. And obviously, you have to go after every last criminal. And he was mentioning MS-13, the gang from Venezuela, from El Salvador, and Tren de Aragua, the gang from Venezuela. And I thought to myself, if people could be a fly on the wall, I wish the folks at MSNBC could be a fly on the wall, right? They had an analyst there not that long ago. I played the audio here on the show, but she said that it's Hispanics, American Hispanics are romanticizing whiteness. No, we're romanticizing safety. We're romanticizing success. We're romanticizing an idea of American exceptionalism that once permeated our history and now doesn't. That's what we're romanticizing, a future for our children, an opportunity for people to be able to grow and grow well and grow healthy and grow rich. We can't make America rich again. Somebody told me that the other day. I said, I'm stealing that tagline. Let's make America rich again. We can't. If we are constantly cutting off our nose to spite our face, opening our own borders to allow people to come in here to rape and pillage our people and our cities. Obviously, this is counterproductive. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I'm letting you know that people are tired of this. And when you get the AG over here saying this, that, and the third about suing Trump, it just tells me these guys are fake, they're phony, and they're fraud. They're doing what they think they have to do, either to cater and pander to what they believe is their base, or they're just so far to the left they see the world through skewed eyes. And that's okay, because I'm sure they look at me and say, this guy, he's been whitewashed. He sipped the Nazi Kool-Aid, right? That's what they think. They think that we're Nazis. They think that we're white supremacists because we love this country. And I'm willing to have that fight each day. What can I tell you? Anyway, I want to talk about DEI and the death of DEI, the downfall of DEI as they shut down the FBI DEI office last week, or at least it was announced last week that they closed it in December. And more corporate DEI offices are falling by the wayside. So what is the future of DEI? What is the future of cleaning up our government? Right? That's another big thing. With Vivek Ramaswamy going to run for governor of Ohio, and with Howard Lutnick becoming Secretary of Commerce, that was the original DOGE team. It's Elon Musk by himself, I guess, and his team that are going to be running DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And this is one of the biggest things that, in my opinion, that we need is this overhaul, this trimming of the fat, this putting the microscope on it. And I think Musk is the right guy because people respect him because he's made a lot of money and he's kind of shown himself to be fair. in many ways, right? Because he was once a Democrat. Now, maybe he's a Republican, maybe he's not, but he's definitely on board with Trump. He became a big free speech absolutist. And I think most people see him as somebody that's flexible and pragmatic. Some people probably see him as a sellout, and others just see him as a opportunistic billionaire. But I think for the most part, his ratings are pretty good, right? I think most people give him the benefit of the doubt that he's really trying to make things better. Even if he's trying to make things better so that the government can continue to back his projects. But if we're spending less, we're spending less. And so I'm not here to provide conjecture on his motivation. I'm here to talk about what he and the DOGE team can do with the Trump administration to actually transform America, to actually shrink the size of government. Is this my conservative fantasy coming true, right? Is it my utopian dream of a smaller, leaner government actually becoming a reality? Well, we're going to find out with the civil rights leader, Bob Woodson from the Woodson Center in a little bit. Of course, your calls are also coming up, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation about the Department of Government Efficiency, and in light of all of these lawsuits that are going on. And as you know, there are some lawsuits that were filed saying that these DOGE committees are unfair because they're made up unequally, as if the rest of the government is equal. Listen to this.
There are these lawsuits that we're dealing with, 3, in fact, on its first day in existence that DOGE is now dealing with. These 3 groups are all separate entities. They're all suing for relatively the same reason, though. They say that DOGE should be classified as an advisory committee rather than as a government agency, because advisory committees actually have certain rules around them. They have to have their meetings all be in public. They have to take notes and publish those notes, along with some other things. This is a statement we got from one group, Democracy Forward, that's behind one of the lawsuits. They say here, in part, the plaintiffs represent a wide range of people and communities that count on the federal government for services and programs. The suit challenges DOGE's operating without complying with federal transparency laws. They may face even more lawsuits or legal challenges because one of the big missions of DOGE is to make government smaller by firing or laying off potentially thousands of federal workers.
So now, this is the drama that has ensued about these lawsuits. Now, our buddy Greg Jarrett has been on this program before, really good guy, knows what he's talking about. He weighed in on the Fox News channel explaining a little bit of the intricacies here behind these lawsuits. Listen to this one.
This is a premature lawsuit. It was actually filed before Trump signed the executive order creating DOGE. And it's basically bureaucrats who object to cutting out wasteful spending. You know, this is the most bloated bureaucracy in world history. And bureaucrats don't want to lose their jobs, so they want to keep the government waste in there because it offers them full employment. So they're suing based on a 53-year-old law that says, well, if it's an advisory committee to the government, it has to be fully transparent and it must be balanced. You have to have bureaucrats on the advisory committee, which is utter nonsense. I don't think the lawsuit will succeed. It depends on how DOGE is constructed, and we don't know yet.
So I think that's pretty well put, and we're going to see how that goes. But I guess the bigger question is, what can we achieve? How far can we go in the reduction of government? How lean do we get? And my hope is that we get really lean, really, really lean. But I want to get some input on this from our guest. I want to bring in one of the big guns here, civil rights leader and founder and president of the Woodson Center, Bob Woodson, welcome back, sir.
Always a pleasure, Rich.
Yes, sir. So let me ask you, we've got all this drama about these lawsuits and whatnot, but to me, that just means when they're coming after you, it means you're over the target, right? So DOGE is the right way to go to really put a fine tooth comb to what's going on within our government. And I think it's a good thing. What do you think the ultimate impact is going to be of DOGE, or at least where do you hope that it goes?
I think it's refreshing. First of all, if you're not flying over the target, they won't be shooting at you.
Mm-hmm.
So the very fact that they shoot at him means he's flying over the target. As a person who has spent his life supporting the interests of low-income people, particularly low-income blacks, it's refreshing. Government has done more to destroy the very communities that they were supposed to be helping. I remember in the late 60s, I was leading demonstrations in my hometown of Philadelphia because the government came in with the Mental Health and Mental Retardation Act, and what it did is destroyed 25 elder care facilities that were established by black churches to care for black elderly in their community. The government came in and said to them, in order for you to operate, you have to follow certain rules, like having an elevator in a building if you have over 2 stories, even though the elderly were on the first floor, you have to have a full-time nurse. And what they did was regulate these indigenous institutions out of business and instead built these high-rise buildings where the elderly were kept in sanitary, aloof places at a cost of 3 times what the local community was paying, and the death of elderly just climbed because they were separated from their community. And there are other examples of where government has come in and injured the poor with a helping hand. So Trump is trying to address this reality, and we applaud his efforts and stand with him 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, do you think he's going to be, and we only have like a minute left in this segment, then we'll come back, but do you think that the efforts with the DOGE group are going to be effective?
I really do, because I think, but they've got to do more than just cut budgets. I think what they've got to do, if you're for limited government, then you have to support local institutions in these communities that are able to deliver for the people in need at half the cost of government. So rather than just cutting budgets, I think you should shift the funding priorities to support institutions that can deliver services to low-income people in ways much more effective at lower cost than government. Otherwise, you're just low-budget liberals.
I believe it right there. That's a good one. Low-budget liberals. Folks, we're on with Bob Woodson. He's a civil rights leader, founder, and president of the Woodson Center. Check them out at woodsoncenter.org. And we're coming right back. We're going to continue our conversation with Bob Woodson. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Bob Woodson. And just on Monday, el presidente, el trompito, Donaldus Magnus, President Trump, was signing executive orders, and he signed one freezing all hiring in the federal government and requiring everyone to come back to work.
The next item, sir, is a freeze on all federal hiring, excepting the military and a number of other excluded categories, again, until full control of the government is achieved and we understand the objectives of government going forward. The next next item, as you announced in your speech, is a requirement that federal workers return to full-time in-person work immediately.
Of course, you heard it right there. Don't hire any new people in the swamp, and everybody that already works in the swamp has to actually show up at work. I think this is a good step towards shrinking government, at least being more efficient in government. Again, I want to bring back our guest, Bob Woodson. He is the president and founder of the Woodson Center. And Bob Woodson, do you think that enough is being done fast enough? And I'm not trying to critique the folks there. I think, day one, like literally right after inauguration, they're hitting it hard. I just think, do you think we need to abolish some agencies? Because I do.
I do, but and I'm pleased that he's taking a radical and dramatic, because dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a civil rights veteran, I am insulted that such a program exists throughout government. 2 years ago, I spoke at the Air Force Academy, and I was appalled at how entrenched DEI is in that institution. How are you going to send young people out to risk their lives for the country when the whites are being told they're victimizers and blacks are their victims? What kind of army or defense are we going to have when we're sending young people out with this poisonous message?
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased that the first thing he did was dismantle all DEI programs throughout the federal government. I think that's the best radical thing that he could have ever done.
Now, it's one thing to have control of the executive branch and to have a majority in Congress and the Senate, but it's another thing to deal with the career employees in the quote-unquote swamp, right? The administrative state. How much of a problem or an obstacle do you think they're going to be to implementing a DOGE agenda?
Well, I think that he's going to get resistance, but there are going to be some people, even inside, who are going to be relieved and are going to cooperate. I mean, the people who work in the federal government tend to be on the left, and so he's going to get a lot of resistance. But I also think that the very fact that the election, I think that Donald Trump is the first post-racial president we've ever had.
Tell me more.
People's going to think, and that's because 30% of black males voted for him, Hispanics. I don't think there's been another candidate that has been able to attract the kind of broad-based support from different ethnicities and race, and that's why I think that you're going to find a more cooperation even from some bureaucrats.
I agree with you, and I think also another culprit, right? The bureaucrats have, I think that there's the big business angle of it. Then you have the bureaucracies that are, entrenched in our government. But you also have the media. And I feel like oftentimes they all work in tandem, and that's how they're able to push forward their agenda. But they didn't expect that Trump would be able to garner the support of people and kind of ignite a global movement focused on populism and putting, patriotism first. And I think this thing has really spread. Just a quick story. I shared a little bit of it yesterday, but I visited the Hungarian embassy yesterday, and the not the prime minister, the ambassador was talking about how proud he was of Trump and how we need to use Trump as an example for Europe, and saying, they ended up chanting, let's make Europe great again. And they were saying, Europe will succeed because America is succeeding. And it was a very endearing message, I felt, because the repercussions of our election and the Make America Great Again movement are being felt globally, Bob Woodson.
No, it really is. It's really a revolt against elitism, too.
Yeah.
That's the fundamentals. It really is against the very fact that you brought all of these entertainers, people in the media, all came together assuming that they could dictate to the American public, the ordinary people, and that they could use race and ethnicity and other issues to divide us. But deep down in the DNA and the soul of America is a desire to embrace the values of the founders. and you saw a lot of low-income patriots show up and change their votes, or they voted by staying home.
Yeah, and
we forget
that's
about
fine.
the thousands who stayed home and didn't vote.
Right. But again, that all helps towards the win, I believe, and it shows how their agenda is remarkably weak, or has been remarkably weakened by, I think, what Trump brought to the table. Now, Bob Woodson, I guess as we wrap up our conversation on DOGE, I want to make sure the listeners understand everything you're doing at the Woodson Center. Folks, for those who don't know, Bob Woodson was once considered to be HUD secretary during the first Trump administration. He's a man of many talents who's been around for a long time, advising on poverty. And I know you're always up to something, so let everybody know what you're up to right now.
Well, right now, we're raising $50 million, what we call the Joseph Fund, so that we can really provide stable funding for these grassroots leaders who are various ethnic groups, white and black. They're busy solving problems that government has been trying to solve, and so we are trying to find the kind of monies. If we can spend if a political party can spend $1 billion in 3 months losing an election, if we take a fraction of that and invest it in indigenous institutions that are in low-income communities, we can heal the hurt that's in the soul of this country. The very fact that all of our young people, black, white, rich, and poor, are dying in record numbers because they're being told that they live in a country that hates them, or they're either villains or victims. And this poisonous message has to be confronted, and the only way we can confront it is to become post-racial. So the Woodson Center is mobilizing its 3,500 grassroots groups, leaders in 39 states to speak up in support of the founding values of this nation and reaffirm the place that we have in the country. So we think that Trump is going to provide the environment in which our grassroots leaders will flourish.
Amen to that, Bob Woodson. And folks, if you want to help Bob Woodson at the Woodson Center, he's been at this for a really long time. I know he sounds like a spry young man, but he's got a lot of history behind him, and he's doing amazing work. You can check him out at woodsoncenter.org. Learn about the mission. Feel free to support them. Bob Woodson, I want to thank you for being here, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. God bless you, sir. And amigos, more from you all when we return. Plus, I've got some audio that you're not going to believe. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And listen to this crazy that's going on from some crazies. So Trump has made reference, for the sake of national security, to acquiring a piece of land that currently belongs, and has for 800 years, belonged to Denmark, which is Greenland. And in the most eloquent way, one of their members of parliament had a message for President Trump today. This is Anders Vistisen. Listen to this.
Dear President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, f*** off.
Ooh, sounds like fighting words to me, Danish Anders Visten guy. Now, this gentleman is just trying to, I think, like many politicians, trying to say something provocative to get some eyeballs, to get some ink, a little press coverage, maybe catch the attention of President Trump, whatever, right? Ultimately, I don't think it's going to be that significant. Now, if I have to eat my words and, the news sounds like this, the vote to sell Greenland to the United States failed today because of one critical vote, that of Anders Vistisen, then you can blame me. But right now, I think this guy's a pendejo, and I think he's rather insignificant. We'll see if I'm right or wrong as time goes on. My track record's pretty good on these things. Now, something else my track record is right on is my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens. When she ran, I said she'd be no good. When she ran again, I said, this is the worst. When I told her I would debate her on the merits of capitalism versus socialism, I said it to her face, and she literally ran away. She literally ran across the street. We were marching in the Puerto Rican parade. It was crazy. That's right. All out crazy. AOC, all out crazy. My least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens. AOC was on Instagram yesterday and decided to give a message saying that Elon Musk is in a country where we hate Nazis. Listen to this.
This is the United States of America. And I don't care what Elon Musk is doing behind a presidential seal. In this country, we hate Nazis. Kind of like a foundational defining thing. Two of probably the most foundational defining things about American history is that we beat the Confederates and we beat the Nazis.
Now, hold on a second, AOC, because I think you're really full of it here. Now, what makes you think that Elon Musk likes Nazis? Really? Like, what gave this to you? Because he did some sort of salute? And this is now being misconstrued as some sort of Nazi salute? I mean, let's be real here. Really, I have to challenge this. Not in a defense of Elon Musk, but in a defense of most people. And then there are Nazis out there. I believe the Nazis are alive and well. I mean, all you got to do is listen to the political rhetoric from some people and their opinion of the Jews. I mean, they sit here and they come up with the most elaborate and complex explanations. The Jews today are not the real Jews. These are the Khazarian Jews. These are the Mafia Jews. These are this Jew, that Jew, that Jew. Jews are bad. The real Jews are... all I could say is, look, I love Jesus and Jesus was a Jew. I keep it really simple. I got no beef with the Jews. All of this nonsense rhetoric, it's Nazi propaganda. And it's still alive and well today. But for AOC to somehow make it sound like in America we tolerate this by saying we don't tolerate this in America, that somehow Elon Musk is a Nazi because he did so. Even if, let's just say, even if he was mimicking Sieg Heil, right? That's just even if. Do you think he was doing it seriously in an act of white supremacy? And I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying a lot of people are funny. A lot of people try to make jokes about things. And I'm not saying that's a funny thing to joke about, but people have different types of humor. And I've seen people make jokes like that all the time. I mean, just over Christmas, I saw a Santa, like a Santa statue. And there were some people in front of me, and the Santa statue was waving. But from the angle where we were both standing, it looked like the Santa was doing that, right? Like a Nazi salute. And somebody said, look, it's Nazi Santa. And I laughed. It was a funny moment in that moment. It was. I'm not saying that the Holocaust was funny. I'm just saying that we've got to stop, jumping to every last conclusion here. And I also think we need to stop trivializing something like the Holocaust. I don't think we should ever do that either. But it goes without saying here that this is hyperbolic. This is invented. This is AOC trying to paint Musk as something that I don't believe that he is. And it's literally what they did to Trump. And it's shameful that they have nothing else but this to rely on. Anyway, play the rest of the cut.
And I don't know what side people may be on today, but I still am not rocking with anyone sympathetic to Nazis.
Hold on a second. Now, again, I don't know what side you're on. Why don't you know? I can tell you, most people don't. There are people. I've heard people say stupid things, but most people are not. I think that's fundamental. So, I mean, yeah, I guess technically she's right. I don't know what side people may be on today, But again, this is clearly a tongue-in-cheek reference, like saying, look, I don't know about Elon Musk and his friends, the people with the red hats, the MAGA people. I don't know if they're Nazis or not, but I'm telling you right now, I'm not. Come on, AOC. Stop being so racially divisive. Stop being such a hate monger. Go ahead.
Do that until I am 6 feet in the ground. Like, kind of foundational to me as a human being. And so if you're cool and want to defend the Sig Heils and the Nazi salutes.
Nobody's defending Sig Heil. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing Nazi salutes and saying it's okay. I'm saying that you're pathetic for making this line of defense for your crazy story here, that it's wrong for him to do this. If he did do it, then you'd be in the right. But clearly, you're wrong, Congresswoman. Go ahead.
All the, whatever you want to do, that's on you. I'm on the opposite side of that. I'm not with the Nazis. How about that? But it's very important for us to assert these things.
It's very important for us to ingratiate ourselves with people. It's very important for us to offer these platitudes as if that they're meaningful, right? Nazi salutes. We're not with that. I'm not with the Sieg Heils. I'm not with the Nazi salutes or whatever you want to do. That's on you. I'm on the opposite side of that. AOC, really disappointed in you. This one has nothing to do with government. This has nothing to do with nothing. You went from being the co-chair of the Hamas caucus to now literally maligning this guy and trying to sully his reputation because of the way he did something. Did you forget Elon Musk is autistic and sometimes he's a little quirky? How about we come after you for picking on people like that? Unbelievable. And I'm not trying to minimize him or say anything like that. I'm just saying, come on. It's like nothing matters when they see something. Like they're like dogs with bones. I guess I could be like that too, but man, this is a little off the deep end, I think. Anyway, folks, your calls and more coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back to the phones. We go 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to Joe, Fairfax, Virginia, WMAL. Go for it.
Hey, man. Hey, I just wanted to touch base. I wanted to say everybody's making a big deal of this Elon Musk so-called Higgs-Heil salute. If everybody remembers correctly, every time Tim Walz walked out on stage, he did the same exact thing with the flailing arms and everything else, and nobody said a word. We've got different standards, different justice, different everything. And there's also a thing called, I listened to a guy named Scott Adams, who's the Dilbert comic, and he talks about a RUPAR, and the Democrats are good at using this, where they actually take a clip, edit the clip, or cut the clip short, so it only shows what they need to see to control their narrative. So they didn't show the part where all of a sudden he touches his chest and reaches out and says, "My heart to you." They just showed the part where he puts his arm out there for a second.
It's kind of like there's good people on both sides.
I agree.
Yeah,
But the problem I have is that, a lot of the lefties don't get to see what's really out there. They are told what their media tells them, and unfortunately, they don't know the truth.
I'll tell you this, though, and you're right about that. But I'll tell you this, the minute that they find out and they do their own research, they come with a vengeance. They become the most radical Trumpers you've ever seen, the most radical patriots and conservatives. It really is remarkable to see those transformations. Joe in Fairfax, thank you for your call. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm coming back. Stick with me.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, Here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live and national. Happy to be here with you. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys on open phones across America. If you've never called the show before, today's your day. Looking forward to speaking with you. Lots of news today. And we spent a little bit of the last hour talking about DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, and the challenges that the deep state is going to face with Elon Musk and Trump and his team, and the challenges that El Trumpito and Musk and the team are going to be facing with the deep state. And of course, those challenges remain ever present as you're dealing with swamp creatures in the swamp. But there's more, right? Because things go on. And I saw some reports on Newsmax and other outlets as well that the Pentagon's ordering roughly 1,500 more active duty troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. And I think this is refreshing. I was hoping it would be done yesterday, but I'll take it. Listen to this.
The operation to move 1,500 active duty troops to the U.S.-Mexico border is underway. 1,000 from the Army, 500 from the Marines will deploy to El Paso and to San Diego. That's on top of the 2,500 troops that are already stationed along the border. That number could balloon to as many as 10,000. Now, the troops won't act as law enforcement, but military planes, including C-17s and C-130s, will be used to deport migrants out of the country, starting with 5,000 from El Paso and San Diego. We also learned today that border agents have new powers. They will be allowed to throw people out who cross illegally instead of allowing them to come in and go through the asylum process.
That's Omar Villafranca with CBS News. And I think this is music to the ears of a lot of people. Earlier, I mentioned that I had a conversation today during my gym time and at lunch with my gym buddies that was shocking, I think, to a lot of people, right? A bunch of guys of Hispanic origin, Americans of Hispanic origin, were having a conversation about, Trump should incentivize people to get involved. This is what my one friend said. He was like, man, listen, I'll do whatever I got to do to help out. This is crazy. I want my kid to have a future in this country, right? Because people are afraid, not because they're Hispanic immigrants, not because of anything, just because we have too many people. And the supply of cheap labor and immigrants is overgrown, and it has outpaced any demand that there is. There's too many people, and that becomes a drain on everything. Right? A drain on school systems, a drain on hospitals, a drain on our economy, a drain on everything. I don't doubt for a second when people say, if you got rid of all the immigrants, our economy, look, I believe there's validity to that argument, some validity. I do believe that there's a lot of people doing jobs that others might not. I also believe that many of those jobs would be done by others if they could. The problem is people are going to always try and go with the person they can pay the least to. Especially the smaller the business that has a lesser amount of resources, they're going to go for that. Once they're a little more established, maybe they can pay more. They might go with somebody else. But we see it all the time. This is the reason why that one kid that came as an unaccompanied minor across the border lost his hand when he put it in a mechanical chicken separator. Kid was 12 years old working an overnight shift. I know my 12-year-old is not going to work that overnight shift. And that's part of the issue, right? Right? We only have ourselves to blame in certain situations like that. I don't blame the guy that came here trying to make his life better to work. I blame the guy that gave him a job. Don't give him a job. Don't create an environment where this guy can flourish. So there's a bit of a catch-22 here. But bottom line remains, we need to do something to secure our border. And I'm happy to hear that 1,500 troops were sent over to the southern border. Looking at this piece again in Newsmax. Now, the order comes after President Trump said that the military must increase its presence at the border to reinforce security. This is good. The active duty forces at the border are part of Joint Task Force North. U.S. Northern Command's border mission is based out of El Paso. They help support the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol protection mission and protecting the border. So happy to hear that. Very, very happy to hear that. And as there's more on that, we'll bring you more on that. Now, there's also some other news. Trump has been signaling to Putin that he has to end the war. Well, today he made that official, telling him, end the Ukraine war now or else. We can do it the easy way or we can do it the hard way. And this is important, right? Because Trump has to say these things. He has to warn Putin that if this doesn't happen, we're going to have high levels of taxes, tariffs, sanctions, all those things. And good for him. He also posted this on Truth Social to double down, saying this is enough, right? This is what he put on Truth Social. Settle. I'll do it in my Trump voice, my best Trump impression I can. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse, El Trompito said. And I agree with him. Listen, I am a little bit of a war hawk. As you guys know, I know that that's to the chagrin and disdain of many, or at least of some. But in this situation, look, I think we don't need to be in this. They don't need to be in this. I think Putin needs to chill. You know, I mean, if just imagine if the Mexicans were to come and say, hey, listen, you know, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, all of their saintly places, those were all part of Mexico. Imagine them saying, we're just going to repatriate our people. We're going to repatriate our territories. The way Putin is saying that this was once part of Russian Federation. We're going to reclaim our property. Are you kidding me? We wouldn't put up with it with Mexico, and the Ukrainians should not put up with it with the Russians. Simple as that. I remember the Russian rhetoric was getting its way through Telegram and some other channels, and people were spitting out that Putin propaganda, saying things like, it's like a fight between brothers. We shouldn't be involved. Let them figure it out. After all, Ukraine was once part of Russia. Get the F out of here. Ukraine has not been a part of Russia for a hot minute, a real hot minute. And I don't care. I don't care if my neighbor once owned my house and then sold it. I don't care if it was once two houses that they split in two. It's my house now, and that's it. And that's my basis for supporting the Ukrainian people and their sovereignty. Doesn't mean that I'm a big fan of President Zelensky or his comedy or his spending or his acceptance of all of our tax dollars. No, not at all. But it does mean that these people have a right, especially when I'm going to say at this point, duped them into signing the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances that said, give up your nukes and we'll defend you. How's that looking? Right? Obama sent them blankets. Trump sent them a couple of missiles first time around and said, hold on a second. I want to make sure you're not proliferating this aid. Right? And rightfully so. And then Biden went and gave him everything. Everything. So here we are. So good on Trump for calling him out on that. Absolutely good on Trump. And Klaus Schwab, you guys know Klaus Schwab. He's doing his thing yet again at the World Economic Forum. And this is one of those guys that I've never been much of a fan of. You know, he talks like Dr. Evil, but he has a German accent. Klaus Schwab is very tough to understand. And he says, society doesn't trust the World Economic Forum, and we must address this existential fear for so many people to change it. Listen to this.
When we meet today, we also have to face an erosion of trust in our society.
You know, I almost feel like we need to play some scary music in the background, you know, to make it more ominous, because he's such an ominous figure. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. To regain trust in order to progress nationally and internationally. This can only be achieved if we genuinely address the existential fears of so many. The fears of marginalized, the fears of those who are afraid of accelerating environmental degradation, and the fears of those who worry about being left out in the transition to the intelligent age.
All right, folks, lucky for you, I'm fluent in globalist, and I'm going to translate that for you. When you hear him say, like the name Sophia, but plural, when he says Sophias, he's not saying Sophias. Just breaking that down to you. He's talking about the fears. And what he says is the fears of marginalized, the fears of those who are afraid of accelerating environmental degradation, and the fears of those who worry about being left out in the transition to the intelligent age. What does that mean? Cyborgs, robots, craziness, AI running amok? I don't know. Maybe none of the above. But I do know that when Klaus Schwab tells me I need to be afraid of climate change and that he needs to regain the trust of the people, I say we're on to something good if we're not trusting Klaus Schwab. He's a nut. Anyway, we're going to hear a little bit more about President Trump leaving the climate accord, the Paris Climate Accord. And I can't wait till El Trompito pulls up at the World Economic Forum and gives them a piece of his mind, because El Trompito is back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
But I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff. The United States will not sabotage our own industries while China pollutes with impunity. You know, China, I mean, look, they use a lot of dirty energy, but they produce a lot of energy. And when that stuff goes up in the air, you know, it doesn't stay there. It's not like you got a wall. We love walls, don't we? Not like you have a wall around and it doesn't. It floats into the United States of America after 3.5 to 5.5 days. It floats across the oceans and it comes right over your neighborhood and it falls into your neighborhood. So they all say, we have to fight for cleaner air, but the other dirty air is dropping all over us. So what the hell are they talking about? Unless everybody does it.
What the hell are they talking about? Folks, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company live till midnight, 1 a.m. in some markets. Happy to be with you. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And El Trompito has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords yet again, right? It's the first thing he did when he became president last time. He did it again because the message has to be sent. And I want to get some reaction to this from somebody that served with President Trump. She's former chief of staff at the U.S. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, during President Trump's first term. Her name is Mandy Gunasekara, and she's the author of the book, Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Mandy, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Rich.
You bet. So Trump has done it again, right? Getting out of the Paris Climate Accord. I think this is a great first step, a shot across the bow. But tell us what you think of it and what else needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, this is an amazing first step. And just to put it in perspective, the first go-round, it took us about 4 months of going back and forth with people in the White House to where the president ultimately announced he was getting out of the Paris Climate Accord. This time around, he wasn't going to waste any time, and he made this announcement on a day one executive order, and he's exactly right. It is a terrible deal for the United States because we have to deal with all of the economic consequences and costs, while places like China and India, the real sources of increased emissions across the board, they get an absolute free pass. And so he's absolutely right to pull us out of this Paris Climate Accord that was also used to fund taxpayer dollars into projects overseas with very little oversight, So just problematic across the board. And what's great, this is step one. He's indicating very clearly he's putting America first. This is a part of his America First vision. And the next thing that needs to happen that the president has already announced in executive orders, but will trickle down into the various agencies to turn the economic engines back on. One of the biggest things is unleashing our precious natural resources that we know how to use in the most efficient and safest manner. And a key part of that is something that's a little wonky but important. It's permitting reform. It's getting the agencies out of the way, cutting red tape, and letting the innovators and the tinkerers and the industrial leaders in this country do what they do best.
Well, I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think they go hand in hand, right? It's part and parcel. You can't really do all the things you want to do if you have tons of red tape in front of you, right? You have to have that kind of bureaucratic reform in order to get through the red tape so that you can actually implement the things that you want to implement.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what the Biden administration did, which was really part two of what the Obama administration started, is they tipped the scales or put their thumb on the scales of the U.S. market in the form of added regulatory costs and increased liability that scares away investors and developmental growth in various industries that had fallen out of their political favor. And this was mainly traditional energy resources like coal, oil, and natural gas. And they sold to the American public that they were doing this to save us all from climate change, but that's not true. And President Trump, what he's doing is he's getting rid of this interference by the regulatory agencies that were weaponized against these industries that are vital to our modern way of life. And I have to say this too, Rich, because I was listening on the intro when President Trump was talking about the pollution coming from China that lands in the United States. That is actually one of the reasons that California continues to be out of attainment, a fancy word for not being compliant with air standards, air quality standards that go back to the late 90s and the early 2000s. And it's because the coal plants that China is building don't use the advanced pollution control technology that U.S. coal plants have been using for decades. So, it flies in the face of the agreements that they're a part of, but they're also building these facilities that export their pollution to the United States. And so President Trump is getting rid of that. He's really calling out the problem where it really is, and he's going to ensure that doing business is more attractive in the United States because more business in the United States, it's better for the environment across the board.
Well, I want to continue our conversation on the environment with former Chief of Staff at the U.S. EPA, Mandy Gunasekara. And I also want to get your take on what you think needs to be done. Obviously, there's a big emphasis on drill, baby, drill, the production of liquid natural gas and other resources, fracking, etc. And I want to get your take on that as the World Economic Forum is in session and they're beating us up for being, well, I think they called us junkies on fossil fuels. So I'm going to give you some audio on that. We're coming right back with Mandy Gunasekara. Don't go anywhere. It's me, Rich Valdez. The phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rising seas, which are caused by rising temperatures, and rising temperatures, which are overwhelmingly caused by burning fossil fuels. Our fossil fuel addiction is a Frankenstein monster, sparing nothing and no one. All around us, we see clear signs that the monster has become master.
That is Antonio Gutierrez, and not to be confused with Frankenstein himself, because he sounds like Count Dracula. Not to be confused with Count Dracula, our producer here. But this guy says that our fossil fool addiction, as he said, is causing us to be Frankenstein's monster. Now, I don't know that that's entirely true, but I want to get a pro to weigh in on it. Mandy Gunasekara, chief of staff at the EPA during the Trump administration, the first round of the Trump administration. Mandy, when you hear General Secretary Antonio Gutierrez of the United Nations say that we are junkies on climate change because of our addiction to fossil fuels, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, he's speaking in hyperbole to try and scare people into accepting the fear that they've created around climate change, so that their policies that require the United States to hand over the reins to our economy to people like the elite bureaucrats at the United Nations, it seems more reasonable. But he's speaking in hyperbole, and he's relying on distorted political science that doesn't reflect reality. The truth is that warming, it's been mild and manageable, and the best thing we've done for purposes of reducing emissions is supporting advanced energy technologies like hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, and an expanded use of advanced pollution control technologies that are widely used in the United States. So that's a lot of puffery. President Trump rightfully called people who talk in that type of hyperbole the prophets of doom. He also rightfully pointed out that they've been around since the beginning of time, and they always ask for the same thing, just to hand over your rights and your liberties and your independence to them, and they'll save you from yourself. But that's just simply not true. They're pushing a leftist, anti-American agenda that has nothing to do with improving the environment or protecting public health. So again, just to reiterate, I think President Trump on day one drawing the line, saying, you know what, we're not going to be a part of this farce. We're going to focus on things that actually improve Americans' lives and actually improve the environment, not just in the United States, but around the globe.
Yeah, that's really well put, Mandy. And I want to get your take on this. My follow-up is, I agree, and I think that's the right thing to do, is to call it out as it comes your way. But there are others, obviously, that embrace a different view of this. And many Europeans in the EU have, for years, been talking about climate change. And the media today is ablaze with this 47% of European Union electricity now comes from solar and renewable energy. And they're very excited about this. All right, terrific. Ours doesn't. and my thinking here is this a claim to moral superiority? Is this somehow indicating that their clean energy versus our quote-unquote dirty energy is somehow superior? I'm not sure how to take it, but I've seen nothing but articles about this in the last several hours. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're not telling you the whole story. The other story is that Europe has some of the most expensive energy in the world. And energy poverty is a phrase, I believe this is correct, was coined predominantly in Germany. Remember when Germany embraced their all renewable approach to energy, and that really backfired. I mean, Germany used to be an industrial mover, an innovator, and they've fallen way behind, which is actually why some of the new folks, there's been a lot of political changes that are occurring, that are in process. And one of the biggest things that the voters there care about is doing away with this approach to achieving arbitrary standards of green energy that have the effect of making life more expensive and more difficult for everyone in that country. So that's the real story. I mean, you know, the left and the people who push green energy, they love to put up, you know, those check the box achievements, but they don't tell the story of the people who are actually impacted by that. And those are the everyday citizens that have to pay more for gas, for groceries, or they lose out on jobs that are that aren't developed in their country, and they're developed somewhere else where energy cost and labor is cheaper, probably China or India, and they lose out on that opportunity. So that is actually what the whole story is, and focusing on some achieved percentage while not talking about the cost and the consequences, you know, that's looking at the world through rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, and now we know the rest of the story, as they say. I love that. And Mandy, I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to follow you and, of course, get a copy or 2 copies of your book. I think it's worth getting one to give away. It's called Y'all Fired, A Southern Belle's Guide to Restoring Federalism and Draining the Swamp. Let everybody know how they get a copy of the book and how they keep up to speed with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, the best place is to order it on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes & Noble. And if you want to follow me about my book and what I'm engaging on, you can follow me on X at Mississippi MG.
Follow her at Mississippi MG. Mandy Gunasekara, I want to thank you for being here. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate it.
Rich, thank you so much for having me on tonight.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, we come back with your calls and more, but I got some audio that, again, there's just too much crazy out there. I got to work through some of this, so bear with me. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your phone calls on open phones across America, a time-honored tradition here on this program that's older than me, right? Started by Larry King, continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon, and, of course, you and I get to let that tradition live on this evening. I want to go to Joe calling us from Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD. Joe, go for it. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Valdez. This is Joe. Congratulations on a great handling of the election.
Thank you.
I go back to Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite, and I know of Larry King and Jim Bohannon. You are one of the giants.
Oh, geez. Well, don't bring my weight into it, but thank you.
That's all I have to say, Mr. Valdez.
Joe, you're very kind. I appreciate it, brother. God bless you. Thanks for the call on WLAD in Bethel, Connecticut. Godspeed to you, sir. Let's go to Jim, Albany, New York, WGDJ. Jim, what's up, my man? You're on with Rich Valdez.
Rich, it's an honor to talk to you. I think you have a nice voice for nighttime radio right up there with Jim Bohannon. Is his name Jimbo and his last name Hannon, or was it Jim and his last name was Bohannon?
It's Jim and Bohannon. And, it's funny that you say that, because I always thought that, Jimbo is a common, nickname for people named Jim. But I believe that because oftentimes when you have a last name that's kind of long like that, like Bohannon, it probably was trying to list his name, but it gets so long that it gets truncated, and then there's an ellipsis, and you just get Jimbo. And I feel like that might be part of what happened to Jim Bohannon. But that's the answer to that mystery. What's on your mind tonight, Jim?
For the last 7 years, I have been extremely angry about local editor, about Joe Scarborough, about AOC, throwing their names Nazi around and Hitler-esque like it's no big deal. My father and my 3 uncles fought in World War II. That it was a wicked, wicked, wicked regime. And to just make fun of it, like throwing them names around like it's no big deal, I don't want to really recite this over the radio, but there was a war documentary where the Polish worker, his job was to remove the bodies out of the gas chambers, and he said it was so violent the women were convulsing, giving birth to their newborns into the violent gas chambers. It's a wicked regime, and you shouldn't be throwing names around like that. It's disgusting.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. And I appreciate it. And, you know, part of what's crazy here, Jim, is that, yeah, AOC, and I feel like a lot of people, right, have kind of trivialized these comments about the Holocaust and kind of losing sight of, you know, how bad it actually was. But when it's used for political purposes, right, people that ought to know better, right? I think if you see somebody in the street, you're talking to somebody at a local bar, something like that, and they're like, oh, yeah, these guys are like a bunch of Nazis. I don't agree, but I understand how it gets trivialized in popular culture and the nomenclature of the day. But when you're talking about an elected member of Congress, someone of the aptitude of AOC, all out crazy, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, I think it's uncalled for, and she should know better. She should absolutely know better. So I think it's a point well made. Jim in Albany, New York, thank you for the call, my friend. I appreciate you. Shout out to WGDJ, Paul Vandenberg, and the crew out there. Thank you. And let me see. Do we continue here? We shall. We're going to go to Cornwall, Canada, and check in with Antonio, who's listening on WVMT in Vermont, siphoning off that signal in Canada. Tony, go for it, brother.
How are you? I'm
doing wonderful.
I'm listening to you very carefully, and I just wanted to bring up something. They keep pounding Mr. Trump, President Trump. It's hard for them to say that, though. And you're right, it's a great comeback, probably the greatest. But anyway, I digress, and I just say the J6 pardons individually, he's right. There's probably been a lot of abuse. The Brady disclosures that were not given, 4 years remaining in jail when they had 10,000 hours and they gave them nothing. That's called a Brady disclosure. And in Canada, we have similar disclosure rules. They didn't do it. They kept these people in jail. But people forget that Jimmy Carter, who recently died, he did a funny thing. He basically carte blanched all of the draft dodgers in Canada under the reprieve and amnesty that he gave them. So that was a reprieve and a similar type of procedure that was done under the emergency power that a president has to give reprieves or pardons. So, you know, when Carter did that, there was okay. I was younger. I don't remember exactly what happened, but you know, it's not as if the parties don't use that power. And I think I mentioned this before, when they wanted to have General Grant, executed after Civil War, the emergency power was used by Lincoln to create peace in the country. And that is what the reprieve and pardon is all about. It's to diminish internal conflict in the country by pardoning certain individuals that would create a future peace. And people seem not to understand that, Rich.
Yeah, listen, that was put very eloquently, and I think you're spot on. Oftentimes, I never forget this one key thing, Tony, and it's that people, myself included, but not as much, only because part of my work is to kind of see things and know things and read things and watch things and listen to things. But part of that is what everybody else is going through. Right? There are people out there that are making sure that when I go to the store, there's food in that store. That when I go to the mechanic, there's auto parts. That wherever I go to get whatever service I'm getting and contributing to this economy, that those goods and items are available. And these people work very hard. Right? There are cops and firefighters and truck drivers and plumbers and electricians and so many different professions out there, barbers, that they go to work every day to do what they do, to support themselves, support their family, to make, their little world a little bit better for them and for the people they love. And the last thing they feel they need to do is to be a watchdog on the government. And so many people become apathetic to the government And they're just like, they're just a bunch of crooks. It's either crook A or crook B. And this is why we have such low voter participation. And to me, this is a problem. Now, Reagan said it best, I think, when he said, we need to be informed patriots. You know, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? And these are great words, great admonition. However, people don't care until they care. And things got so bad with Joe El Baboso Biden that we realized, man, this is out of control. So why? Why are we not paying more attention? Well, I think we are now. And, you know, I was having a conversation with my brother, and to kind of put a finer point on this. And we were talking about, you know, why people buy into conspiracy theories, hook, line, and sinker, like QAnon or any of those other things. And again, I'm not saying there's no truth to parts of it, because there is. Right, when they're talking about the trafficking of children, you know, the Jeffrey Epstein thing was real, right? There are women that are being trafficked. Jeffrey Epstein really is dead, or isn't, right? However you want to look at it. These things are all real. The media was conspiring against President Trump. The intelligence establishment did conspire with the media against Trump in favor of the Hunter Biden laptop story, you know, being suppressed, right? These things all happened. Russiagate happened. And these things have all been put on display. And I feel like all of that was kind of put out there on a lot of different conspiracy channels, and it got to people in different ways. Some people were affected by COVID, becoming warriors in the area of health freedom. Some people didn't like what they were hearing about children, and we saw an entire Hollywood production made about the trafficking of children, The Sound of Freedom. That was a big hit, right? There were different elements of things that I think happened as part of this great awakening, quote unquote, that led to this historic victory that we had right now with President Trump. And those were all important things, but it all has to, it reinforces what you're talking about. When people don't know what's going on, they don't care. And sometimes the only way to get them to care is to make the information you're trying to communicate very entertaining and very informative. And that's why I think talk radio audiences have been so well informed over the years. But those that don't listen to talk radio get left behind, and they fall victim to conspiracy theories. So either way, I think there's a purpose and a place for everything. And again, I really appreciate your comment, Tony. Cornwall, Canada tonight, listening on WVMT. I got to take a pause right here, but we're coming back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let's go to Nick in Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Nick, with a minute to go. Lay it on me.
Yeah, I'm looking at a copy of the Chicago Daily Tribune here, the newspaper, one of the major newspapers here in the Chicago area, and it has an almanac, like on this date, on January 17th,
right.
in 1917, I'm reading it, the United States paid Denmark $25 million for the Virgin Islands. Now, that was when $25 million was $25 million, you understand? So anyhow, they will sell it, I think, if they see a financial gain for their country and the cost of developing all those minerals and all that, that's going to cost a lot of money. They don't have that ability. And the need for us, Trump is right, we need to have some kind of a better control of the Arctic areas with China and Russia going across those areas. And so that's it.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense, Nick. Great tidbit. We paid $25 million for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Why not Greenland? Nick, thanks for the call. Shout out to WLS Chicago in the building. Thank you so much, America. Coming back with another great hour of programming for you. Keep it locked right here. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the third hour of the program. Happy to be here with you, and it's my pleasure. We're doing this live, so feel free to give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. And I want to get into a little something with you guys tonight, because there's a lot going on, right? We've talked about the climate agenda, President Trump pulling out of the climate accords, the Paris climate accords. We've talked about, we talk about DOGE and the effectiveness of the DOGE work. And I think that is something that needs to be done and has to be done effectively and will be. I do believe it's going to be successful. I think it's going to be met with some resistance, but I think it's important. And there's more, right? Because a big part of the work that's being done with these executive orders that was signed revolves around immigration. And I think that's a very, very important thing, right? We have to make sure we protect our borders. And it wasn't that long ago that everybody agreed with that. It wasn't something foreign, right? You weren't a racist, a bigot, or a homophobe or a xenophobe even, if you said that we needed to protect our country, keep America first, limit immigration to 1 million people a year, ideally focusing on people that we can help through asylum and people that we need, right? Merit-based visa systems and whatnot. However, here we are today where everything that's right is wrong and everything that's wrong is right, right? We've got the bishop calling out Trump and Vance in a sermon, quote-unquote sermon, asking them to please have mercy on the children that are afraid that their parents are going to be deported. I mean, you've got so much hyperbole, so much rhetoric, so much fake, phony, and fraud, in the words of the immortal Bob Grant. Talking points that I think the message gets lost on so many people. But again, it wasn't that long ago where we had good discussion on what mattered, where politicians agreed on certain things, right? When it was time to defend the country, they agreed. When it was time to talk about taxes, there might have been disagreement. You know, other issues that were of domestic import, there was discussion. And we've become, I'm going to say, hyper-partisan in many ways. Not we, the audience, or we, you and me, but we collectively in America, where it's all about winning for the team. And I understand, I do, right? It becomes tribalistic, if you will, right? You're winning at all costs. But you need someone that can break through the noise. And I think we've achieved that, right? We now have a president that most people in America agree on. And he's got an agenda. And part of it is to seal the border. And that's great. But you get these people like the bishop, her name Marianne, whatever, Buddy. And I have to say, it's disheartening, right? I think it's disheartening that someone of the cloth is going to approach this from a political perspective. But if, let's say, they're just being compassionate, right? That they're, a bleeding heart liberal. And they're being compassionate, and they're saying, look, these are people too. And I don't think anybody's making the case that they're not people, right? Nobody's saying they should be gassed, God forbid. They're saying, look, you can't be here. We need to repatriate you, perhaps you and your entire family, with your country of natural origin. And I think that's fair. However, not everybody agrees. So what do we have? Well, we have... I believe we have a clip of this reaction to the clip I played you yesterday of the bishop. Count Delacula, tell me again what we have. The bishop was on The View today, ABC's The View, giving her take on the reaction to her I would say, outlandish comments. Listen to this.
Do you think your message is being misconstrued and politicized?
Oh, well, sure. Yeah. But I think if you read what I said, and I mean, how could it not be politicized, right? We're in a hyper political climate. One of the things I caution about is the culture of contempt in which we live that immediately rushes to the worst possible interpretations of what people are saying and to put them in categories such as the ones you've just described. That's part of the air we breathe now. And I was trying to speak a truth that I felt needed to be said, but to do it in as respectful and kind a way as I could. And also to bring other voices into the conversation, which voices that had not been heard in the public space for some time.
I don't know what she just said. It sounded like a whole lot of nothing to me. But then she wanted to double down on dignity. Listen to this.
You seem to have more fearlessness than anyone in Congress right now, ma'am. What made you decide to use that opportunity for this message, or didn't you have any apprehension about it?
My response, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be with you today. My responsibility that morning, yesterday morning, was to reflect, to pray with the nation for unity. And as I was pondering what are the foundations of unity, I wanted to emphasize respecting the honor and dignity of every human being, basic honesty and humility. And then I also realized that that unity requires a certain degree of mercy, mercy and compassion and understanding. And so knowing that a lot of people, as I said, in our country right now are really scared, I wanted to take the opportunity in the context of that service for unity to say we need to treat everyone with dignity.
We need to treat everyone with dignity, and I agree with that. I don't think that Trump or the Republicans or anybody I'm hearing talking about treating people without dignity. I just don't hear that, but maybe you hear that. Let's go to Jerome. Jerome's in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA, and you know the rules. If you disagree with me, you get moved to the front of the line. Jerome, very quickly, tell me your thoughts on this preacher.
Good evening, Reverend Valdez.
Muy buenas noches.
Buenos dias. Hey, by the way, I love her. More props to the Rev. You get him, Rev. Don't you take none of his guff, because when you mess with the Rev, you messing with God. So you better be careful, old Donald J., Mr. Insurrection. You better be careful. You messing with her, you messing with God. You don't want to mess with God. You're in enough trouble as it is now. So you better be careful.
That's El Trompito to you. And listen, I agree with you that she's not out of line per se, because she's doing what she feels is right. My comments are more around, are we going to always stay in this bleeding heart liberal position? And maybe we need to. Certain people do have to have that level of compassion, not me per se, right? That's all I'm saying. I think that she can also, instead of stoking the flames of fear and really adding insult to injury here, she can clearly say, look, fear not, right? Fear not. God will see you through this. You know, what's for you is for you, right? Like Romans 8:31, if God be for me, who can be against me? You can encourage the flock rather than continue to stoke the seeds of fear. And that's really, I guess, the point that I'm making. Jerome, thank you for your call, brother. Shout out to you guys in South Carolina, WTMA in the building. And I really wish we could get back to a time where we agreed on immigration, where if you broke the rules, you were asked to leave. And that's really all I'm saying, right? That's really the bottom line of all of this. And, you know, Hillary Clinton famously said those same words, you know, back in 2008. She was running for president. She said, look, if you break the rules, you got to go. Check this out.
I think we got to have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked. They're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
Holy smokes. Can't believe that. That's not a deep fake. That's the real deal. Hillary Clinton herself. Crooked Hillary. That's her. So what happened? How did we change? Well, I think the deep state had a lot to do with this. And whenever I want to talk about the deep state, I want to talk to somebody who understands how the CIA works and the rest of that stuff and the impact that these executive orders, especially the ones that affect national security, like the border security stuff, what type of impact that's going to have on us across the country. So straight ahead, we're going to have a conversation with Rick de la Torre. He's a former CIA operations officer, and he knows a whole lot about a whole lot of things that I don't know about because I was never in the CIA. But we're going to find out his opinion on stuff when we come back. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm so glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What would a person have to do to get a visit from ICE?
Well, for it to be in the country illegally, first of all, I mean, there's nothing in the immigration law that says you got to be convicted of a serious crime to be removed under the INA. So if you're in the country illegally, ICE can visit you. But right now, as we said repeatedly, and the President Trump's been clear, we're concentrating on the worst first, the public safety threats and national security threats. And just yesterday, in the last 24 hours, ICE arrested over 308 serious criminals. Some of them were murderers. Some of them were rapists. Some of them raped a child. Some were sexual assault of a child. So ICE is doing their job, and they're prioritizing just as the president said they would. So the ICE is performing excellent right now out in the field, and they're going to continue every day.
That, of course, is Tom Homan. He was on the news today talking about this particular topic, about what it is entailed and what is required for a visit from ICE. And they seem to be taking the task very seriously. National security is of the utmost importance right now. President Trump putting that at the top of the agenda. Even in his inaugural address, the second one of the three that he gave, saying that this was a top issue for him. While people were saying it was the economy, he was saying it was immigration, and he doubled down on immigration yet again, and it worked yet again. So I want to talk about national security and overall on how all of these bold executive actions are, kind of reestablishing a strong national security for the United States. And I want to do that with our guest, Rick de la Torre. He is a former CIA operations officer and the SVP, Senior Vice President of Strategic Risk and Intelligence at Continental Strategies. Rick, welcome to the program.
Maestro, it is a pleasure to be on the air with you.
Thank you, brother. Te lo agradezco. I appreciate it. I really do. I'm looking forward to the conversation because from your perspective, I think you have a different and unique perspective because I think, being in the CIA, you understand things, the global intelligence threats, and there's plenty, right? I think, what we're seeing here is not just the people that are looking for, like AOC would say, people that are trying to feed their families. That's not necessarily the case, right? This gang that we see all over Colorado and New York City and other places, Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, these guys are vicious, and they're not disorganized, very, very organized transnational gang. You've got others that operate similarly and with support from our communist sympathizing enemies or adversaries. So I think there's a lot more to the picture, and I want to get your take on some of these executive actions that President Trump is taking to bolster our national security. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, you spelled it out perfectly, I thought. Look, the southern border, we've completely turned our back on it for definitely for the last 4 years, right? And what we've seen is just about everybody and anybody who wanted to come to this country basically could. They could just cross over the border. I mean, the CBP One app that was on, basically all you had to do was give your name. They tell you to show up for a court date a few years down the road, and you could come in. And this wasn't just a Latin America issue, right? This wasn't just our neighbors to the south coming in. We had everybody coming in from Africa and Southeast Asia and parts of Europe. And quite honestly, there was just no way of knowing who was coming into our country. I mean, that's the biggest problem that I think we really faced. The media reports that lots of folks that were on terrorist watch lists were stopped along the border. And that's great, right? Hats off to the men and women who guard our borders for catching those guys. But what keeps me up at night is which ones didn't we catch, right? Which ones actually slipped through. And that's something that I always felt this past administration, the Barroso administration, right? Yes. One of the things that they just really didn't focus on at all. Really at all. And yes, there's misery and there's poverty and there's a lot of unhappiness in the South, all right, and all over the world, but obviously in the southern part of our hemisphere too. But that's no excuse really to allow criminals and rapists, murderers, to come into our communities. And you nailed it. Tren de Aragua is probably, I mean, it makes MS-13 look like Boy Scouts, right?
Now I want to get your take on this.
What these guys do.
Yeah, I agree. With about a minute to go here, the declaration of a national emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border, I think, is an important mark because he says he's going to label Mexico a narco-terrorist state, a foreign terrorist organization because of the cartels, and I think this is a big deal if Mexico doesn't play ball. Your thoughts?
Well, so a couple things there, right? By labeling the heads of the narco, right? The narcos, the head of the cartels themselves as terrorists, right? That frees him up now legally, and within our systems to then rely on the Department of Defense. It's no longer now a law enforcement issue, right, where you rely on whatever DEA, FBI, or any other law enforcement agency to pursue and to take action. Now it's something where you could get like special forces and Navy SEALs involved if you needed to, and that now frees them up to actually make those kinds of calls in conjunction, of course, with the appropriate people within either the Department of Defense or the intelligence community.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think he made that threat last time, and that's what got them to agree to the Remain in Mexico policy, so the migrant protection protocols. Rick, stick with me, brother. We're going to come right back and continue the discussion. Amigos, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with former CIA operations officer Rick de la Torre. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Obviously, the wide open border has created an indescribable human catastrophe for us that we will be dealing with for decades. The president is very serious about addressing that, and guess what? So are the American people. Look at the New York Times poll from just 2 or 3 days ago. 87% of Americans say that we should deport illegal aliens who are criminals and dangerous to American citizens. This is, again, common sense. So I think the people are behind the president and his agenda and his priorities, and he's going to make those decisions, and we're going to do our part, and we're going to work together very closely to address all of it.
That is Speaker of the House Mike Johnson at a press conference earlier today saying this wide-open border crisis has created an indescribable human catastrophe. He's putting it lightly. I believe that Joe El Baboso Biden and his partner in crime, Que Mala Eres, the vice president, were engaging in the biggest human smuggling operation this country's ever seen. It's a modern-day slave trade, and it happened right at our southern border and was funded by you and me, the taxpayers. So I want to continue this discussion about the national security implications of Trump's executive actions and how they are going to fare for our country. I suspect that we are going to do well as a result of them, but I want to get the input of our guest. I'm bringing him back in, Rick De La Torre. He's a former CIA senior operations officer. He's the senior vice president of strategic risk and intelligence at Continental Strategy. Check them out at continentalstrategy.com or check out his website, rickdelatorre.com. Rick, welcome back. I want to get your reaction to what Speaker Johnson just said.
Yeah, it's just spot on. I'm not exactly sure where liberals and the left thought that somehow they were on the right side of the opinions of Americans on this subject. I mean, Daily News was telling us about the murders and the rapes and the increases in crime, and they try to brush it underneath the rug, right? Like it's no big deal. But when people in their own neighborhoods start to see the shifting and the changes, it becomes a real political issue for everyone. And he's spot on. This is something that we're going to have to address. If you look at migration in the United States, up in, throughout the 19th century, where it came from all different parts of Europe, that was an infinitesimal amount compared to what we've seen coming in at our southern border, and that changed the face of America forever, right? So this is one of those things we're going to be dealing with for generations
now,
to come.
87% of Americans say that we should deport illegal aliens who are criminals and who are dangerous to American citizens. That's what the speaker just said. That number is up from the last time I saw that poll. It was 60-something% back when it was just a majority. 87%, it's almost 90. This is a resounding number of Americans polled that agree with this action. Do you feel that we're going to have the infrastructure? I've asked a lot of people this, and most of them agree that, yes, we do. We can use the Federal Protective Service. We can use all different parts of federal law enforcement and the military for support in a supportive function as well. I agree that we can get the job done. I guess I want to get it done quickly. And what are your thoughts on how quickly we get the ball rolling here and how effectively we get it done?
Well, I think Tom Holman's already got the ball rolling. I mean, ICE is already looking out for the bad guys that are here actually committing crimes. A lot of that's is going to deal with having to work with local communities, and you talk to the cops who work at the local level, right? They would like nothing more than to work with the feds and actually turn over the folks that actually have detention orders from ICE. But as you know, there's a lot of communities out there where they have forbidden the local police from actually cooperating with federal law enforcement.
Sanctuary cities
change,
and their policies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's going to change, I think, under this administration. They'll tie that into federal funding of local law enforcement through DOJ. And when millions of dollars, are then become withheld from local communities, then I think those mayors and those county elected officials are going to start maybe rethinking their sanctuary city policies. You're seeing it in New York, of all places, right? And what's going to happen then, I think they'll start rounding up the felons, the criminals, those that have warrants after them. Those are going to be probably the lowest hanging fruit because no community wants them, right? Within the Hispanic community, as you know, right, we don't want criminals to be associated with us. We don't want people that are going to come here and cause chaos and hurt the United States. So those are going to be the first ones I think that are going to go, and then we'll see where things are at then, and hopefully other things will come into play, and we'll have some methods in place, hopefully, where we could then start looking at other options, right? I think the one thing about this administration is everything that they've discussed is they want to do it humanely. They want to do things correctly. They want to make sure that they follow the letter of the law, something that we haven't done in the last 4 years. and I'm confident they're going to be able to pull it off.
Outstanding. Now, folks, I want to remind you again that we are on with Rick De La Torre. He's a former CIA senior operations officer, and he's currently the senior vice president of strategic risk and intelligence at Continental Strategy. Check out them and their website at continentalstrategy.com. And you can check out his website at rickdelatorre.com. And let everybody know how they find you, social media or anywhere else.
Yeah, so I got to confess, I'm kind of new to all that. For a number of years, I really wasn't really focusing on having.
You were busy doing spy work.
A presence, right?
I gotcha. Trying to stay off the grid instead of on the grid.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Trying to stay off the grid, not on the grid. But I'm enjoying it. I'm having the time of my life. Thank you for plugging my blog, where I like to do now some personal writings on things that I think matter to the United States, on topics of national security and on topics of new technologies and where those things tend to intersect. So rickdelatorre.com is my personal blog. And then I'm just learning all about X and Twitter. So I created my X account probably a few weeks ago, and you could check me out there at VRK_Rick. And and welcome to engage in those types of conversations.
Outstanding, brother. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate the input. We'll be in touch again as we need to get a little bit more of that global perspective from a former CIA guy like you. Keep up the good work, and thanks for being here, my brother. Godspeed.
Un fuerte abrazo.
Igualmente, brother. Folks, we come back and we continue the conversation with you all, we the people, the callers. It's open phones across America, and I've got a couple of more clips that I think you're going to enjoy. So don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, it's time for Open Phones Across America, where we speak with you all, the American people. Happy to speak with you guys. And I want to go to the phones. Let's check in with Sandy. She's in Laconia, New Hampshire on WNTK. Sandy, what's on your mind tonight? Sandy. All right, let's put Sandy on hold. Maybe we'll find her when we come back. Let us go to William, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. William, go for it.
Hey, brother. I just want to say you're becoming a huge hit here in Chicago. Everyone in my nighttime world loves you. They do.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that.
Well, one more quick thing.
Sure.
The Keystone XL pipeline, get that kicked into high gear day 2, you know?
Yeah, listen, I agree. I think we need every spigot that we can turn on for energy production needs to be turned on. That's not something I think that is an oversight at all. I think the wheels are in motion. I ask a lot of provocative questions on this program, kind of tongue in cheek because I know the answers already, but I like to hear what other people are thinking when we bring the guests on. And listen, I think Trump is going full speed ahead with everybody in his administration doing that. I was texting back and forth with some of my friends that I know that work in the White House. And I can tell you that prior to the inauguration, I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to be in town from Friday to Tuesday. Maybe one of those days we'll get together. And the answer I got back was 0 chance. We are running on every cylinder. They had no downtime. And I think what you saw on Inauguration Day was not only the culmination, but really a continuation of what's been going on. William, this team of people that Trump has assembled, including, and I'd say principally starting with him, are going nonstop, right? They're not sleeping. They're just going hardcore, living on Diet Coke and $1 and a dream. And God bless them for doing it. I appreciate it because America needs that type of full speed ahead approach in order to right the wrongs that have happened and to turn this ship around. So I'm with you. Open up the pipelines, all the pipelines. Allow drilling on federal land. Let's do that. Get out of the Paris Climate Accords. Yes. Shut down the border. Bring the military. Start the deportation of the people that we know are wrong, starting with the ones that are being held. Put pressure, bureaucratic pressure on people who are looking to try and pull that sanctuary city nonsense, and let them know, listen, we're coming, and we're coming in hard, and we're coming in strong. So thank you for that, brother. Shout out to everybody in Chicago on WLS. Very kind of you. And let us continue. I want to go to Peter is in Memphis, Tennessee, WKIM. Peter, welcome.
Hey, Rich, I appreciate your call. I was driving, excuse me, and couldn't respond, but you had those two clips on AOC about what she was saying. And one of the things she said is, I can't remember exactly what it was because I said it didn't catch me at first, about we beat the South or we beat the rebels or something like that. And I was thinking, well, that was the Republicans. That was Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, as far as I remember. And then she said, we beat the Nazis also. Well, the Nazis were socialists. Isn't she a socialist? So I'm not sure exactly how that goes up against what she thinks and says. I remember seeing something on History Channel about how Stalin was suspicious of Hitler because he was a socialist, and Hitler was suspicious of Stalin because he was a communist, and the two of them were together going to Poland, and then they split up, and then, of course, Hitler did go against Stalin. But the other thing is, on this climate change, I know 10,000 years is a great ice age, and half of all of Canada and half of the North American continent was covered with ice, and I imagine it was the same over in Europe. And I guess when you had that large of a big wad of ice on top of the Earth, maybe on South Pole too, I don't know, surely it would cool the climate. And as all those square feet of ice are melting, they would cool the ocean because it was enormous. And as that got smaller and smaller, surely it would get warmer, and the ocean would get warmer because you don't have the same volume of water melting off this ginormous ice glob on top of the planet. Maybe even the bottom half of the planet. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
It'd be like
well, listen,
if you had
let me just
room.
back up a little bit, if you don't mind. I want to back up to your comments on AOC. I think you're right. I think they don't make sense from that perspective. I think, to give her the benefit of the doubt, if we could, it was in order to say that we being not the Democrats, but we, America, beat the Nazis, we beat the Confederates. I think that was the position. I mean, she rarely takes a pro-American position, but I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. But I think you're right. And go ahead. You wanted to finish on your other thought.
Well, and so, if you had a ginormous ice cube in your house or your room or a stadium, it was ginormous, it would cool it. And as they got smaller, you would be able to see it melting faster and faster. You wouldn't be able to see it melting when it was huge. And it would also be getting warmer and warmer as it got smaller and smaller. So I'm not sure how why that. I know the climate change has been going on forever, and it's still going on. And I think there's some people who speculate it's cyclical, it's cycles of ice age and warming spells. And the other thing is California is burning. They got all this emission control and everything. And you hear about all the fossil fuel burning, but look at California. They didn't manage their forest. How much pollution are they putting in the air and everything with their forest fires? Did they just set them back a few tens of years with all the air pollution resulting from their fires?
Right. Yeah. This is going a little bit off the deep end, and I got to take a break here. But yeah, I think I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate it, brother. I got to take a pause here. Sorry to leave you hanging that way. But Peter in Memphis, Tennessee, I appreciate it, brother. Shout out to everybody in Tennessee. WKIM. Coming back to the rest of your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your calls, open phones across America. It's Wednesday night. It's fantastic. By the way, I want to give a big thank you to all of the new radio stations we've picked up. We have a bunch of new radio stations, which is why we're now heard from 9 a.m. Take two, security, 9 p.m. to 1 a.m., depending on the market that you're in. In some markets, those times are different. But we're live from 9 through midnight. And some parts of the country are getting the bonus hour till 1 a.m. So good for you and Godspeed. And I want to just thank all of those new affiliates and all the new listeners. I want to welcome you to our late night national town hall conversation. And let's go to Otis, Morgantown, Kentucky, WKCT. Quickly, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Thank you for taking my call, and
pleasure.
Hope you had a really good weekend.
Oh, I did. Thank you. God bless you. It was a real blessing.
That's good. Rich, I'm really upset about this clergy woman up there at the National Cathedral in Washington for talking down to the president and the vice president and their families. She's a perfect example of spiritual wickedness in high places. Her job is supposed to be winning souls, and she can't even give out a good once every 4-year prayer to launch a president and his administration off in the right way and everything. And
I think you're right.
Me upset too.
Well, listen, I was upset too. I mean, it rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm not going to stifle what any member of the clergy can say or not say, but I can critique, just like you did, and say, you know what, I think she took the wrong approach, right? You know, there's a strengths-based approach and a deficit-based approach, and I think she took the negative aspect here. There was no need to do it the way she did. She's free to give her opinions when she wants to give her opinions in any other sermon. But this is a sermon where you have the President of the United States right in front of you. You want to wish him Godspeed. You want him to do well, whether it's Joe El Baboso Biden or anybody else, including El Trompito, because you want your president to do well. And she should have done better, in my opinion. But good point, and I agree with you there. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Lance in Kalispell, Montana, listening on KOFI. You're right. The media will never give up on Trump. But, folks, that's it for me. Hasta la próxima. Take care, and God bless you, America. Some of you are going to continue to hear our conversation on lots of important things, and that's coming up straight ahead. Until then, hasta la próxima. Take care, and good night, America. I'm Rich Valdez.